you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another episode of All About Mechanics. Now today is going to be Direfrost Keep. We're going to do it on veteran difficulty, and of course we're going to do the hard mode as well. Now we're going to use the same setup as before, very simple yet effective. One tank, one healer, one stamina DPS and one magic DPS, making sure we leave no rolls out of the group. So hopefully this will give you a better understanding of how the dungeon works, how to beat the bosses and how to understand their mechanics. Here we go. Now, when you first enter this dungeon, make sure that you press the speaking stone in front of us, as you can see there, if you don't have the quest already, because that's how you start it. Now, that's relevant for later, not so much the quest itself, but there is a stage in the dungeon where if you don't have the quest, nothing happens, and if you do, something does happen, but I'll get to that when we get there. Anyway, the first hill that you go down towards the first boss, there's 3 bears, not so much like the story, but there's 3 bears in each pull. There's 3 pulls of them, and basically, if you get your tank to hold them in the middle, you just hit the enemies from behind, you should be just fine. Don't dart around the room trying to run away because they'll just hit you in the back of the head. Just get your tank to hold them still and then AoE them down as much as possible while focusing the higher health ones. Now, one thing to note, they do hit fairly hard if you are a squishy, so don't stand in their face. You'll see in a moment that I get hit by a conal kind of AoE. There is a heavy attack, there is a knockdown. You can block it, but as you saw, if you get caught, it will knock you on the ground. First boss is relatively simple. He's got a lot of direct damage that he'll aim at the tank or whoever's got aggro. All you need to do is hold him still. The AoE damage that he's throwing out there, like the rocks that are flying around, you can stand in it if you've got decent resist or if your healers are on point. But if you start taking too much damage, just get out of it. But the basic mechanics for this is pretty much hold your tank, make your tank hold the boss still, and everybody else just DPS it down. The tank may need to block a couple of attacks just to make sure it doesn't take too much damage, but honestly this boss isn't that much of a challenge. Even an experienced DPS can tank it as long as you block the right stuff. Again, you can see I'm obviously losing health by standing in the AoE, but if it gets too stressful, just step out of it for a bit, let your healer catch up, and you'll be just fine. Into here, as you won't see it on my screen because I've already picked it up, but as you enter, on the left-hand side at the very back of this corridor, in the corner, I think I just aim my bow at it as I get there, there is actually a lore book, so make sure you pick that up if you haven't got it already. Just there where Stig's aiming his shield. This room, very, very simple. Base mechanics of all dungeons, make sure you interrupt the ranged targets. Let your tank pull everything into the center, and while they're doing that, make sure you interrupt healers, archers, mages, anything to that effect, so that the spread kind of AoE effects don't affect the whole group. Now, there are a lot of targets in here, there's a lot of pulls, and of course your tank needs to be on top of that. So it can be quite difficult for their sustain to pull everything all at once. So if you are a DPS or you are a healer, just consider that they're going to have to recover, and some things may take longer to pull than others. So if that is the case and you've got things in the corner that are throwing out AoEs or throwing out stuff that can be interrupted, make sure you're on top of that. See this archer in the corner, if he was doing anything stupid I'd be interrupting it, because obviously the tank's still trying to recover. It's not a problem, just keep your eyes peeled and don't let them do anything stupid. Next pull is pretty much the same. I mean, that last pull you can actually skip, but I wouldn't recommend it. I kill everything to make sure that you get the most out of the dungeon, especially if you're looking for certain loot, because you can get some of the shiny stuff off the trash. But anyway, this is the same as before. Put all the stuff into the middle. Make sure you stay on the interrupts. Don't stand in the face of the enemy if you can help it, unless, of course, you're the tank. The corridor is fairly simple, but the boss can be a bit of a nightmare. Keep an eye on that mage on the left. The ice mage, make sure you interrupt him as and when you need to, because otherwise he throws out some really nasty ice attacks. He can stun you and immobilize you and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to get caught by it. Archers again fire off a nasty arrow spray, so make sure you interrupt those as well. Above all, don't run around the room like a maniac. Let the tank position everything in the middle, and you do your job after everything is controlled, or during that stage. Now this boss is very simple. As you saw then, he did a bit of a jump. That is a mechanic that you can avoid as long as you pay attention. Occasionally he will jump to one person. If you're close enough, sometimes he doesn't do it at all. But if you're too far, he will do it. He'll jump to whoever's furthest away. Now you see that he puts an AoE on the ground. All you have to do is get out of it and then get back into position as close to him as possible, while the tank just keeps him very, very still and turns him away from the group. The main nasty attacks that he fires out are normally aimed at the tank. One is a kind of cleave effect, which is a conal AoE on the ground, and the other is a heavy attack. As long as the tank blocks both of those, you're just fine. The AoE on the ground, like I said, it will be aimed randomly at one of the members of the group. All you need to do is step out of it. Don't sprint off out of the room and run and scream, heal me. That's not going to help. Just get out of it and then get back in again. Very, very simple. But if the tank drops the boss and you don't block that heavy attack, you are in trouble. So control it, keep it still. Again, keep an eye on the ice mages and keep an eye on the archers. Make sure you interrupt them if they do anything stupid. Give your tank some time to recover so they can pull them in. But be careful, of course, if you stun stuff, you can't chain them. So key points so far, of course, especially as a tank, make sure that you control the melees, make sure you pull in the range and hold them still. If you're a DPS, make sure that you pay attention to everything around the room, keep some AoE down so you can do kind of passive damage as everything's being controlled, and make sure you interrupt ranged targets and healers. They are always going to be a problem, and in the neutral dungeons especially, and towards the version 2 and DLC dungeons, the pulls are much larger. There's a lot more enemies. Takes a tank a little bit longer to pull everything in. Make sure that you're paying attention to what's going on. Otherwise, you've seen it happen before. You'll go into a pug, the tank's trying to do his best, and everyone's screaming, heal me, while running around the room shouting, why aren't you chaining these in? Consider that although you've got resources as a healer or a DPS to use your abilities with, so does the tank. It takes time to pull everything in. So, again, help your team, interrupt stuff as and when you need to. Another pull right there, very simple. Put everything into the middle. This room is a bit messy, and I've seen people wipe on it, so just be careful. Tank always goes first. Remember that. Tank always goes first. Put everything to one side as much as you can, and while you've got that group controlled, stay on the interrupts, and then try and pull in the other side. Now, if they haven't aggroed you, like they haven't here, you notice that we just went to the left first, then we go to the right. You can actually do it in 2 stages. So if you can hug up on the left or the right-hand side as you enter the room, it's a lot more manageable, and you don't have too much stress. Failing that, your tank's going to have to be really busy and pull everything in as quick as possible while you interrupt just about everything in the room. Turn my chat off because I keep getting messages while I'm recording. 2 platforms here. Make sure you have 2 people, 1 on each platform. No, you can't streak from one to the other. No, you can't dodge roll and run or rapids to one or the other. It's deliberately made for 2 people. Be very careful when you jump off this edge because the Banekins will run at you and they will explode. So make sure you've got enough space to stay away from them. Don't sprint around the room. Just stay close to the boss. Let the tank hold it really still, or if you are the tank, hold the boss still. And as those Banekins come in, stay away from them while they're running at you. They're on a timer, so they will explode before they get to you if you move back a bit. If you stay where you are, they're going to pop and you'll die. Now, there's a couple of heavy attacks that you have to be aware of as a tank, and there's also a cleave effect that the group needs to be aware of. You'll notice we're in the little triangle formation with the 2 DPS and the healer again. We've all got our own space. We're just staying away from him, making sure we don't get caught by the AoE. And if the Banekins run in, we kind of step back a bit. You don't have to panic and run around in circles. Now, this pedestal in the middle of the room over there, you'll see that, well, at the moment you can't really see it, but there's a bit of a light in the middle. You need to take a flame from there if you have the quest. So it's very important to know, otherwise when you pull this lever and go all the way back to where you need to, you'll realize you haven't picked it up and you have to come back again. It's quite a long run, so don't mess that part up. If you got the quest, pick up the fire, or the torch, or whatever you want to call it. Now, there's 3 trolls on the way here. You've got 2 options. You can either pace it and take them one by one, or you can kind of get your tank to aggro them one after the other and just run to the end and hold them all together. But just take into account they do have AoEs that go down on the ground. They do slam the ground, so don't get caught by it, and especially if you are pulling all 3, because obviously they will stack up and it will really hurt. But of course, safest option is just to pull them one at a time. It's not really that much of a time saver if you do or don't do it this way. It's only a few seconds either way. And with this particular setup, healer, tank, and 2 DPS, you can actually speedrun and no death every single dungeon, no problem whatsoever, just by casually going through it and following the mechanics. It's very simple. Now, we're going to run back to the center of the dungeon, which is where we came from a little while ago, where I said there would be a quest update, if you like. Now, basically, the reason we picked up the fire is because there are 3 enemies on some chairs. They're dead, or sleeping, whichever you want to call it. Now, if you bring the fire with you and set fire to the bonfire type thing, or the beacon in the middle of the room, the 3 enemies will stand up. There's 1 mage, and then there's a melee guy and a slightly stronger melee guy. You have to make sure that you pull them all together, burn them down in AoE as much as possible, and of course keep an eye on the interrupts. But we can't show that here because of course none of us actually have the quest. But they're 3 kind of mini bosses. They don't hit that hard and they don't have that much health, but make sure your tank kind of pulls them into the middle of the room together. These guys here sitting on the chairs, and there's the fire in the center. Make sure your tank pulls them into the middle, stay on the interrupts, and do as you do with most adds. They just have a little bit more health than your average ad pull. Anyway, that's only for the quest. If you don't have the quest, you don't have to do it. Now off to the right here, this one gets skipped quite a lot. Don't skip it because, well, don't skip content. You never know what you're going to get from them, and of course sometimes achievements count for killing everything, so just make it a habit that you do kill everything. Get your tank to pull everything into the center as much as possible, but this boss does resemble the last boss, very much so. I mean, the mechanics are very, very similar. Now, the AoE that he puts at the front, the tank obviously has to be careful of. There's a bit of a heavy attack coming from that. This mechanic here, where he's channeling, you can actually interrupt it, and this big AoE you don't want to get caught in. It will freeze you, it will hurt, and it will quite possibly kill you as well if you're a squishy. If you're a tank, you can stand in it, but it's up to you whether you want to get knocked back or not. If you don't want to, just move out of the way and then come back in again. You'll see that he suspended the tank in the air then. When that happens, you must break free, because if you don't, he will heal. It's very, very important. Can't stress that enough, and that is really, really relevant and incredibly important when it comes to the last boss. Those two have very similar mechanics. Big AoE, suspend you in midair and heal off of you. Keep that in mind for the moment. Now this pool has a lot of ranged enemies, so you have to make sure that you are paying full attention to those that need interrupting. Your tank should put everything into the center and try to hold it still as much as possible while you kill everything with area of effect damage if you're a DPS. If you're a healer, just stay relatively close so you can keep everybody healed, but make sure that everyone is paying attention, like I said already, to ranged targets. You want to make sure they're interrupted. And I'm pretty sure I missed a target here. There's an archer still left. I did. There he is. Make sure you interrupt them anyway. The next corridor, exactly the same as everything else you've seen already. There are a lot of frost mages. Make sure that you don't stand in any AoEs on the ground, and of course don't stand in their face. But if they need interrupting, make sure you do so. Tank again should position himself in the very middle of the room, hold everything together as much as possible, and chain in as and when you can. Keep on those interrupts at all times. They really, really hurt. Sometimes you can get primaried where all the ranged aim at one DPS on purpose and they get a barrage of attacks all at once, and there's nothing you can do about it. So the tank should always go first. I know people like to YOLO, but it doesn't get you any brownie points. Nobody really cares. And in fact, most people will just get a little bit annoyed that you keep dying all the time when you really don't have to. So let the tank go first. Same again, pull everything into the center, hold it as still as possible. These do run away a bit sometimes when they get chained in, so make sure you root them straight away if you are the tank. Also watch that explosion. It's not too powerful, but you don't really want to get caught by it if you're quite new or if you're a squashy. This boss has very, very low health, is very, very simple, but can go stupidly wrong with people running around in circles. You notice the tank has gone in front of the boss and just spun him around so he can't hit us anymore. Now we stand in a kind of triangle formation again. DPS, DPS and a healer in our own spaces, not dancing around the room, and just go through your rotations as normal. Now, ice pillars will spawn out of the ground. Mind that AoE, just step back a bit. Ice pillars will spawn out of the ground, and when they pop, skeletons will come out. So just pay attention to those. Your tank should be able to taunt them if they don't die right away, but if not, they will normally die to just basic AoE damage. But keep your eyes and ears open for those anyway. Don't run away. It's not going to help anyone. Let the tank control the room. Again, that big burst AoE that comes from the boss, it's not too powerful, but it will knock you back, so I would advise just stepping out of it. A couple more pulls before the last boss. One, in fact. This one I see people skip quite a lot. Don't skip it. Kill everything. Especially if you're looking for loot in the dungeon. Like I said already, everything can drop. Basically boss loot. Weapons, jewelry, all that kind of stuff. You never know what you're going to get off them, so always kill them. Now the next boss is an absolute pug killer. For those that don't know what that stands for, pick up group as in a random group. Anything like that usually ends up in a disaster on this boss, whether it's normal or vet, because people do not understand the very simple ability to break free from stuns. I see it happen in PvP all the time. People know how to break those stuns, but in PvE people forget how to do it. This is very, very important for this boss, so pay attention to the mechanics. Now, she can be taunted as far as a debuff is concerned, but she will hit whoever she wants when she feels like it with nasty frost light attacks. If you don't stay in the heals, you are going to die quite quickly because they do hurt. She teleports, as you see here. When she does, just spread out a bit, stay out of the AoE, and then get back in your position. You'll notice we are in a formation. As you can see, Bob and Weaving there was wobbling in the air because she attached a nasty leeching beam to him. That will heal her. That is what you have to break free. So you keep up your DPS, you keep in a nice formation so you're not running around the room in circles, and when she teleports you get out of the way, and when she puts the beam on you, you break free. There's the AoE, get out of it. All that ice shard stuff will kill you. The tank not so much, but a DPS you'll be very, very lucky if you survive. Now occasionally you'll see the Frost Wraith type things spawn. As long as you've got enough AoE on the ground, they should generally die to that, but if not, your tank can always pick them up and hold them by the boss. Again, ice attacks, you can see that Christine is now getting hit with those. The tank has taunted her, but she'll still hit whoever she wants, so pay attention. Make sure you keep a shield up if you have to. There's the nasty AoE again, stay out of it. Get straight back in, don't sprint around the room, it's not going to help. You saw me suspended in the air then. For a very brief moment, I broke free, we're safe. The longer you are in that phase, the longer she holds you in the air, the more health she recovers, and she can heal to full in no time. So make sure you break free. You must break free from that mechanic. You're going to get people screaming at you for days if you don't do it. More ads, make sure the tank holds them still. Get out of the big AoE, and then again, very important, get back into your formation again. Always get back to where you were. Find a position around the boss, everyone's got their own space, you can see who is getting hit with a light attack, so the healer can now focus on whoever's got the aggro. Now there are Frost Atronachs that spawn when she's very, very low health. Depending on your damage, depends on how problematic that will be. They can be taunted by the tank and held on top of the boss, so they can just die to general AoE. But if they do start chasing after the DPS, please do not run around the room. Just stay near the tank, let him pick them up, or her pick them up, and then you can kill them steadily along with the boss at the same time. See, they run around the room a little bit, but sprinting off is not going to do anything because they'll just chase you. So, to recap, stay out of the AoE. It will kill you. Break free of that nasty beam and stay in your formation so that you can tell who is being hit by the boss so the healer can keep up to speed. Break free, you'll win. No break free, you'll lose. So hopefully that helped, hopefully that wasn't too boring. I can't stress enough how important it is to break through on that last boss, so make sure you pay full attention to that. And if you are with a group of friends that don't know the mechanics as well, and perhaps you've watched the video and they haven't, make sure you explain that to them very, very clearly. It is really, really important, and I shit you not, it is a pug killer. So many people rage quit because of that last boss, and it really doesn't have to be that difficult. Anyway, first of all, thank you very, very much for watching. I fully appreciate the support, and if you are not subscribing, please do so. That button is free. Also, like the video on the way out if you like it as well. Secondly, of course, if you would like to support the channel on YouTube, there is a sponsorship button now, and you can see that in the description. Also, outside of YouTube, there is a link for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website xynodegaming.com, where all the build guides and dungeon guides are as well. Once again, thank you all very, very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.